The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Hey everybody, it's Andy. Just a quick apology. When we were setting our levels for the music, I kind of did a quick and dirty job, and I should have paid more attention and done a more thorough check. So Jim's voice becomes mildly distorted at a point or two, even though he is doing his champion best to work the mic. Which if you know, you guess, and if you don't, then it doesn't matter. Buckle in. This is an amazing and emotional story. Thank you.
Just tell me when you're ready, Andy. He can keep playing.
Oh yeah, we good. We going already.
Welcome back to the Burrows of Berea. I am Rick Welch, and behind the glass is Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
I don't know how to put cow in key, but I would where I thought it possible.
Yeah, I have been looking forward to this episode I think we've been working on this for about a year. Jim and I have talked, this has been over a year we've talked about this.
Oh, yeah, we're maybe even closer to 2, at least a year and a half.
Yeah, my great friend Jim Beaver is here in the studio. Jim, thanks for being here. Beautiful. He is a musician. He is when I say great friend, we go way back.
It's like lawn chairs, yeah.
Yeah.
He's also lots of jokes.
Yes, he is. We always have a great laugh when we're together. And his son...
He just did one like 10 minutes ago that just killed me. It was so fast, too.
His son David was in our film Witch. Did you ever see that, Jim? You did?
Yes, of course. We saw the premiere.
Oh, you guys came and saw the premiere. That's right. And then you had a song.
That's right.
You had a song on that.
That's on that soundtrack.
It sure is. Yep. On Witch.
Yeah, my EP from that we did over here at Andy's from
Running on Empty.
That was that's Tacky Tie Publishing or copyright Tacky Tie.
Yeah.
It was on that.
Oh,
I think you paid for I think you paid for the session even for the movie. I think
I don't remember if I did or not.
You did some stuff, and a lot of stuff was just other stuff.
I think you already had. I can't.
His stuff was finished.
His stuff was finished, and I think you mastered the disc. And
yeah,
you also
I think I did a lot of
bluegrass.
remasters to get stuff to kind of flow on the same album, kind of thing.
Right. Well, I'm going to be quiet for a minute. Jim and I actually played in a band together. We were introduced by Barry Johnson. You remember Barry? Yeah, I don't know if you know him, but he knew you. Barry Johnson, he was a roadie for Eddie Van Halen.
He introduced the two of us?
Yes, back in the 90s, late 90s.
Really?
Yeah. That's how I got to know you. He gave me your phone number. He said, you need to know Jim Beaver and he needs to know you. That's how I learned about you. Was through Barry Johnson.
Was it Barry Johnson or
No,
Matthew Kennedy?
Not Matthew Kennedy. Matthew Kennedy played at our church. But Barry Johnson had come to our church, and Matthew was the drummer. He played there for our worship band.
That's right.
At Christ Community Baptist
you introduced
Church.
me to Matt.
I introduced you to Matt.
Spoons
Kennedy.
Yes,
that's
Spoons
right.
Kennedy.
And
okay.
absolutely. And then
wow, that's
after we met, and then you started up the sort of like the Antioch Lounge. That was the early days.
That's right.
And I sucked as a keyboardist, and I was like, "Why would you want me?" But
so what did you do? You like called me up out of the because that was pre-social media, right?
It was, and he said you need to meet him, and so I just called you. I've always been weird like that. Like I do it on Facebook. I stalk people, and then I'm like, "Hey, man, I want you on my show," like whatever. But that's how
Nobody
I met
remembers what it was like before social media.
And
we all have blocked it.
You
out.
had a studio in the parsonage across from First Baptist Church of Hendersonville.
That's right. And you would bring a keyboard, and I taught you how to play jazz.
You taught me how to play jazz.
That's right.
Yep, and the Cannonball Adderley,
Oh, yeah, we did like demos up there with Derek Sandlin.
And
playing bass, right?
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I've got a picture of that, I know. It's like...
and then we did the one in our field.
I've got that picture,
yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen that picture in years.
Oh, I'll find it.
You have it?
I have it.
Well, and then Was Spoons in that picture too?
Yeah, it was all
We
four
all
of
had
us.
white shirts.
It was Derek and me out front with some like Goodwill like blazer or something. It was like a profile pic. It's like,
but that was years and years ago. That's when
kids.
my
This
kids
was worthy of MySpace.
my kids were little at the time. And,
Yes.
But that was it was weird for me, Andy, because I've always been a hack piano player, like just a a chord guy. And then after I met him,
No shame, baby.
well, that's just all I knew, and I learned the chords, and so I could get a chord. I could look up a song, and then listen to it on Kazaa. Does anybody remember Kazaa? And teach myself how to do it. You use the chords. This is before you had the Ultimate Guitar app.
It doesn't matter. All the tabs still wrong.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
No matter how far into the future you go.
Or pay for.
Yeah, exactly.
Or pay for, yeah.
But I just, but Jim was really patient with me, and he showed me the ropes, and so I learned how to phrase. And Derek actually taught me a lot on the keyboard. Derek's a phenomenal keyboard player.
No, he's a Jedi of the highest order.
He is.
Yes.
Have you seen or talked to Derek?
I'm pretty sure he's like eating like soup and floating rocks in a stump or something. I think he's active in the Brevard area. He teaches a lot. I talked to him. Well, see, Spoons and I went on with him to form what was the first iteration of the JBB stuff. You know, and that's where I wrote that Ordinary People tune was around that time, and he was a big part of that. But,
do you have links where I like Ordinary People? Is there a way?
It's all on all the all the streaming platforms.
So, guys, if you go into the paragraph at the beginning of this podcast, I'll have links to all of that, so you can go and hear some of Jim's music here.
Cool.
Play a little bit for me, man.
A little bit for me. Well, it's not my key. See, a little bit for me. There we go. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the earliest memory that you have when you first heard the name Jesus Christ?
Is that the question that was potentially going to be asked to me in the previous session that you waited for?
No. We can ask that later.
No,
That's just
that question I'll ask at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. The first, say it again.
To the best of your ability, the earliest memory that you have of when you heard the name Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's a good question.
And I guess not as a cuss word. I mean it as, like, in reality, like...
like Bill Cosby's kids?
Yes. but I'm Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I don't know that I, can remember a moment. I can tell you, what feels... It's, again, I'm visual.
Yeah.
It seems like it was probably around Christmas time at a church with my grandparents. We didn't go to church in my family, but there were times where we would visit, particularly when I guess grandparents were keeping us as little kids. Looking back, that's what it was. Mom and dad were getting free kids for a weekend or a week or whatever, 2 weeks. And I think going to either a Methodist church in Mars Hill or a small Methodist church that I now live like a mile across the street from, and it feels tied to Christmas time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
how old were you, would you say?
Oh gosh. I don't remember my childhood chronologically all the time. It's it's kind of scattered.
Sure.
So, I mean, probably pre-kindergarten, I would say, around 4 or 5, something like. Yeah, that's when I became cognizant of the notion of a God.
Yes.
I might have, and then understanding that what Jesus was celebrating. That seems to be like an early memory, not being just about presents and Santa, although that was certainly involved.
Yeah.
So, young child.
Which is awesome. Yeah, speaking of Christmas, you and Christian Singleton together wrote a song from my film Let It Snow.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
We did.
That was a cool song.
It was a cool song that never got... Somebody should release that. I think it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Christian's, she's killing it.
Oh, she's super talented.
She's a Jedi too.
She is really. Yeah. And she, so I don't, it's at the end of the film, Let It Snow, and it's on TackyTieFilms.com. If you go watch Let It Snow and go to the end, you can hear it, but somebody should just release it on Spotify.
Yeah, we should just release it on it as you do like a Tacky Tie, the soundtrack to the Witch movie would be a good thing for you to release. It's cheap now to do that.
Yeah? You guys have to show me how. I'd love to release all that because all those guys.
And it all just points to it's all reciprocal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Word of mouth too. But there's some really cool. That was a cool scene that circa what 6-7 years ago.
What's that?
That when the music on that soundtrack, a lot of the bands
That's longer ago. Well, no, maybe not.
there were
Maybe
some.
It was just 6.
It was an
7 years.
interesting collection.
2017.
There's a
Yeah.
growing music scene even in just the Hendersonville area, but that was a lot of people that or in,
Yeah.
that was a cool.
I actually
sort of
did.
time
I only knew
capsule.
a couple of people. Annie introduced me to them. I'd never met the guys from Strange Avenues before.
Right, Wintervals.
The Wintervals. Now I do know them.
Yeah.
I didn't know them before, but I know them now. you know.
Yeah, those are sweet people too.
Lisa,
Yeah.
and we spoke. It wasn't too long ago. They're doing really well. Yeah, so they're no longer the Wintervals. They're a different group now.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, but so all right. So you hear about God. You're young, 3, 4, 5 years old, whatever. And so, tell me about the time whenever you heard the gospel. I guess when you heard it and it actually.
Yeah. That's a good question. I can't tell you the first time I heard the gospel. I feel like it was almost sort of like a paradigm that like a common knowledge thing, like gravity makes stuff fall down,
Yeah.
It was that early. We weren't like practicing Christians. We weren't good at it. My parents weren't certainly.
Yeah.
But I feel like it sort of was maybe even in the same time period as like discovery of God and the message of salvation, Jesus, in that context. Sort of, I don't remember the two being separate. I remember the name Jesus Christ being tied to gospel, essentially the need for salvation.
Yes.
You're not who you need to be able to make it in, kind of
Right.
stuff. I can tell you for sure I was like 9 or 10, and for whatever reason, my dad had a thing about, obviously from his childhood with his crazy like church and God baggage and parents and all that sort of stuff we all deal with. But he, sorry, this is a little tough to talk about.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. That was the warning. I remember he had a real like soft spot for Billy Graham, and it would be like you would not be able to convict him of Christianity in a court of whatever any other day of the damn year, but for whatever reason he would want to put that on TV if it was on one of those like Billy Graham crusades.
This is your father?
My dad.
My father did the same thing.
Is that right?
Yeah, he'd be on ABC,
Mm-hmm. And I'd be wanting to watch The Simpsons or something else.
Right.
And that's okay. We got to watch Billy Graham, and I sat and watched it and was moved very deeply and went back in my bedroom and I understood the concept enough to say I get it. Like I'm and I said I see it. I'm a sinner. I see that I can't. Whatever level of holiness that you are, I'm not that. Like Peter falling in front of him. Like I saw it, but also saw the kindness, And Billy Graham had a really unique way of making things simple, but also I feel like I think the reason why so many people responded to him was because not just his personality, but the way that he would contextualize these messages. It was almost like it was God saying this stuff.
Yeah.
Like in just a heart to heart, like it's not that big. It's kind of just like a matter of paperwork. You know what I mean? But you need to know this, and I'm not throwing you. We've made it very different and very hard to and unpalatable for even people that are in it.
Yeah.
In today's evangelism culture or whatever. But I was 8 or 9, probably, and that's when I got saved. I asked Jesus to come in. I said those words, I'm a sinner, but please forgive me. I want you to be my savior. I want, and things were absolutely different from then on. Even as a young kid, I can remember like from then on out, there was like a knowing and almost it wasn't a big deal. We didn't go to church, so I didn't have to unlearn the weird handshakes and goofy emotional things that people that grow up in church had to learn. I had a very abusive and horrendous home life. But that from that prayer on, it was like, I knew he was with me. It wasn't like a hearing him talk in a room kind of thing. But from that point on, it's never been like stained glass windows with me. Like it's in terms of religious, like I want the person, it's got to be like a relationship where it's not,
Right.
I can't do the rules because that's all I did was not be able to do the rules as a kid. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's, I've kind of gotten in and out of that a little bit, but I don't know if I'm even making
No,
sense.
no, it 100% makes sense. And I think that I did as well. I had a very awful childhood, and I went at the age of 10 as well. And so there was no discipleship. I went to a church, Stony Mountain Baptist Church had a bus ministry for all of a year. And I went because the bus, took me. It was a great babysitter for my parents, And as a parent, I would have loved to have had that when my kids were little too.
Right.
Thanks a lot. No, but and then after that, so you're growing up in this house. It's abusive or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but regardless, you have this thing that's went on in your heart, but yet you have this whole dynamic in your life, and so it's it's like we know we have that, but we're not getting fed by the word, or we're not getting, you know what I mean? We just have it.
Yeah. I mean, there's passages in Romans where it talks about, in a roundabout way, it's addressing like, well, what if people didn't get a chance to hear, I mean, it's like questions like, can God make a rock so big he can't pick it up,
Right.
But some of that stuff bears answering, like I had a very unique experience over the last, couple of years of my life in particular that makes this a profoundly important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the what's always bothered me is the portrayal of what God's like, and the abysmal failure that I'm putting rabbit ears in the air, air quotes church, like the person, what he's like actually what the dude is like.
Yeah.
Is a humongous, like really big divide. Not everywhere, not with everyone, but it's, it's no wonder people don't want to become Christians.
Yeah.
I don't want to be what a lot of Christians are. I don't want to live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't, and I did for a long time, but I'm kind of jumping around and getting ahead of myself.
No, not at all. So by the time you get to the point where you're going to go to church, when does that become? Because when I met you, you were going to church. And so,
yeah, you've always been a Christian for as long as I've known you, I think.
Towards the tail. Well, I was involved with it. It's easier for me to like, just kind of like cruise through, but, I didn't like willfully want to go to church until I was like, like 19. Something like that. Yeah. It wasn't like something I might have played about. I did believe, but I wasn't into church culture. In fact, I thought it was ridiculous. Like I made fun of friends that I had. I was in a band with some local dudes I went to school with. It was called Chapter 11. You didn't record any of that. No. That was right before I met you.
I don't think I've ever heard the band. I'm just
there's every once in a while I'll get like a picture somewhere. It'll filter down to me with a text message or whatnot, and it's like a picture of that record in like a Hendersonville Goodwill. We sold like a bunch of them like on the graduate, like everyone was lining up to like graduation rehearsal.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we like stayed up all night in Stephen Hawk's basement and like burned.
Burning.
Like Maxell, like rappers there.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
This is kind of the good old
days.
That
was the good old days.
And I personally sold like gobs of them, but every once in a while they'll end up in like Goodwill over on or otherwise, but yeah, they're not like available for streaming. they're like, we found this like cool tube, like amplifier, like that would go with a
record player.
Well, yeah, like a record, or like a really more even past that, like one of those stereo systems, like the bookshelf stereo. That's what
like a component stereo.
But it had like a really nice warm sound, so that was sort of our preamp. We just had like a dynamic mic, and maybe we had like a 4-channel mixer or something like that we were just so we just like live played through like the Beatles did kind of stuff,
Wow.
Yeah, but BJ Wilson's singing on that, and Stephen Hawk, who's in a band called Drunk with a Dumpster. I hadn't talked to him in like a decade and a half maybe, but
Drunk in a
Dumpster. Yeah, he was the bass player. I lived with him for like a couple weeks at one point during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of a blast from the past, last week Duncan Trussell was on Joe Rogan again. It's just so weird. Like, this is a guy I went to high school with, and I was in a play.
Yeah, that's funny.
and
Yeah,
you
every
watch
time you say that, I remember it.
I know he was
I'm
on
like, oh, yeah.
again. You know, if you ever, when you watch Joe Rogan, if you ever see him dress up in a funny costume with somebody, it's always Duncan.
Oh.
Duncan's a nut. He went to West Henderson.
And you know the guy.
Yeah. Well,
Or
I
knew
mean,
him.
I knew him.
Yeah.
Yeah. We weren't like the best of pals. We were in a play together and acted together and talked, but I didn't hang out with him or anything.
Right on.
But it's just weird to see that.
Sure.
You're like, you know what I mean? Like, Joe Rogan's the #1 podcast in America, you know, and he's on it all the time. So
Duncan Trussell's got a pretty big podcast.
he does, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. But anyway, so let's get back to you.
Okay.
Yep. So you were 19, and so you willfully began to go to church.
Well, that's a sort of a ball of wax. My father passed away suddenly. So I was 19, and my sister was still living at home. But prior to that, it was a very, very dysfunctional family situation. My parents split at 12. When I was 12, rather. I had 2 sisters, and my youngest sister went to live with my mom, and my older sister and I lived with my dad, who was just probably would be have been diagnosed bipolar like his father was, my grandfather.
Yeah, that's rough, boy.
But he was also an addict, and be it alcohol or otherwise. Like, things just got weird. Like, some of the things that, the internet's coming into prominence during that time. So, without going into a lot of detail, I just witnessed a lot of, whether it was being screamed at my whole childhood, or my father sort of, sinking further into just whatever that was, mental illness played out in palatable ways where you can hold it together in front of people. There was a line out the building of people wanting to get to his funeral when he died. Everyone liked him, but the people that had to live with
Right.
him, so.
I knew your father.
Yeah, I know you.
I knew him before I knew you.
Yeah, that was probably hard for you to hear, but that's
No. It's actually okay. He used to yell at me.
Yeah, well, hey,
He yelled at me because
apparently that means he loves you. I've read that.
I've heard that before.
That's what I thought.
I was in a band, and I cranked it. I played it on 11, and he was like, "Dynamics, you need dynamics." But yeah, Dick Beaver, good guy. But
Yeah,
Man, bipolar, especially with addiction, it's so brutal. And I don't mean to the person, and it is to the person, but holy crap, you talk about you cannot trust that person.
Mm-hmm.
You do not know
Oh, they're explosive. Yeah.
how you're going to make them angry, and you can't fix it, but all you could do is try
Yeah.
and fail and then disappoint them and try and fail and just repeat that for, I don't know, a whole childhood.
Yeah.
Like, that's not my story, but I've seen it in other people, and it's just, holy shit.
yeah,
It's a lot.
That's pretty.
and that's the one that you look up to. That's your father.
Well, you're supposed to.
That's right.
Yeah, he was impossible to please. He was basically what Andy described there with the unpredictability, So what that does, that's a traumatic thing for someone who is literally like leaning on this person for all basically it made my sisters and I have to grow up pretty early, So
sure.
in a lot of ways that served me well through my life, but work ethic and just, this has to get done,
Right.
So, do it for yourself. Now it's been weird coming back to my kids, getting to these ages where some of these traumatic things happened, and it's been interesting. It's sort of taken me back to accessing, I guess is a better word, what it felt like kind of remembering the room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you remember where I remember recording in this room, and he didn't have the panels up yet. It was all just drywalls, and it was like, we put an amp back here. I think we tracked something like that. It was just so live, and it was cool. But I remember the way that the air smelled, But seeing my kids at this age, it's bringing me back to being able, the Ben Folds 5s. It's so weird to be back here from that lyric and Ben Folds tune.
I love Ben Folds.
What's the name of that song? Fighting It. We're still. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
It's great, but
Yeah.
it's been really poignant for me watching my son graduate, for example. And remembering, I'm doing things a lot better than my dad.
By the way, one angry dwarf and 200 solemn faces is one of my favorites.
That's a good. Yeah, that whole record is good.
That record.
That record will cut through any road noise that you can encounter. You can listen to that front to back and drive
The whole
anywhere.
album.
And it's every bass line, everything is auto. It's a really great record.
It really
It
is.
was mixed by Andy Wallace. It was recorded, I think, on a 4-track or somewhere in just like in a trash can. and just
in
mixed,
Winston-Salem.
And it's one of those mixes that I love because you can hear how rescued it was entirely in the mix. Like that's how it sounds to me. And there's a very particular sound. Rescued albums don't all sound the same, but they all sound like rescued albums. And that's one of them. And that's the sound of that album. Not exactly, because like I say, they all come out different, but you can tell that one was rescued by somebody who really knew what they were doing.
Was Stevens Last Night in Town on that album?
I think that's later.
Is it?
But I might be
That's
wrong.
earlier. That's the record before that one.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
The one with like Jackson Cannery and all that stuff, with all the ragtime.
Right,
tunes.
yeah. Anyway.
Oh, God, that's good stuff. Anyway, we could just talk about Ben
We-
Folds.
yeah.
Not talk about my. It still takes me. The environment I grew up in was so critical, whether it be in my like upper, extended family. It was. I still am surprised when people like care what I have to say. It's true though, with my like Andy was talking about with the unpredictability, you develop coping mechanisms where you're hyper alert of everything. So that can be exhausting into your childhood, or into your adulthood, and things that worked when you're 20, you don't have the bandwidth to do anymore,
Yeah.
So, but all of that to say, it was determined that in my house, the only way you have to go to college, you have to get perfect grades, you have to get straight A's without support or any, thing, so that you can get these magical things called scholarships. And that's, it was almost like a South Park episode, or, like underpants, and then profit, it doesn't exactly work that way, but you're 17 and you've grown up, I could sum up a lot just by, if you've ever read Hillbilly Elegy or seen the movie. It wasn't like as backwoods barefoot as that, but it was along those lines. My mom discharged a firearm in our house because she hadn't slept in 28 days at one point, and the whole yard was full of police cars when the school bus dropped us off at home.
Oh, wow.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. And then you grow up in this environment, you don't realize how it still feels like I'm looking for attention, and like milking is a better word. When I describe these things to people, it feels like I'm like I feel. I mean, I was there, I felt it, but like it'll sort of be like you've conditioned yourself for it to not be like re-traumatizing every time you think about it. But when I say things out, like I'll tear up because I'm like, and I've said things to my wife before about my childhood, and she would like look at me, and I would finish just sort of telling a story or whatever, and and I'll look, and her mouth is like a gape, like, huh? You want me to make you some cookies or something? Like it's No, she.
It's funny. Understanding your own life is making guesses based on not the things you've experienced, but the things that have happened around you. It's really weird. It's really weird. It's like that whole unreliable narrator thing. I don't know.
It is amazing how desensitized you can be to life because of trauma and things like that.
It's true.
Because, we can talk about things. I mean, from my own personal experiences, I can say things now only because I went through cognitive behavioral therapy.
Did you really?
Oh, I love it.
Oh,
It's the greatest therapy in the world. I love it.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. Well, I love it. And
My wife's a social worker. She's
really?
Yeah, she's a master of social work. So she's
So I went through, and I needed it, and I'm glad that I did it. It was life-saving. And
that's amazing.
yeah. And so when I did, I learned that a lot of things that I was saying, like I wasn't feeling emotion because I really wasn't feeling anything, And the beauty about cognitive behavioral therapy is you don't go through your past, you actually deal with your present. And that's from at least the therapy that I went.
Right.
We didn't, as a matter of fact, he's like, we're not even going to talk about your past. We're going to talk about how you're responding to things right now, which was wild because I always wanted to go back to my past, but he wouldn't let me. And I always thought, why hasn't he let me tell you? Because I'm giving you the reason why I think, no, that's not what we're worried about. We're worried about what you're doing right now. And we got down to the basics. It was amazing. I love that therapy. I don't know how everybody else's CBT went, but that's how mine did. And it changed my life radically because everything came out in anger for me. Like it didn't matter what it was. It always would peak through anger, you know? So, but we talked to other people who have not been traumatized like we were. And it's like matter of fact. And to them, it just levels them. And they're like, what?
Right.
And you watch them have emotion. And you're like, oh, like, why are you having them?
Yeah. And with me, like my particular way that I sort of, with all the like trauma responses, the fight, what was it? Freeze, fight, whatever. And there was flight. That's what, and then there's a fourth one that's emerging. They're calling fawn, which is kind of where you all like, you can't stop the grown up from being this way. You're not really, unless you kill them. I did think about that a time or two. That's how bad. I mean, that's just the reality of it, you know? So I'm forced to try to find a college. My sister is attending a college in Raleigh, and
So she's out.
She's at this point. She was the older sister that, you know, she was sort of like the parent in the house, really.
Yeah.
Like she was the one that was like, I mean, yeah, that motherfucker's like paying the bills, sort of, you know. But and like we're all hip. We don't agree on much. Like me and my siblings, at least her at this time, you know, we weren't exactly close, but we had like all like realized there's a certain symbiotic like relationship, and you know, it was like the biggest insult if one of you would like rat on the other. It's like, fuck, what? Like, come on, you know? You know what's gonna happen to me, like for real, you know. And he rode me the hardest for sure. But mom was potentially bipolar too. She'd been seeing a therapist and on you know, various forms of psychiatric drugs, you know, my whole life. She's not been in our lives in a number of years, and it was problematically mentally ill, you know, to be hard to have a relationship with. So
absolutely.
So I've sign up for apply on my own as a 17-year-old, pay it out of like with what to me that was just what you did. You know, you had money that you had to buy the things because you're a damn grown up at 16, 17, whatever, really. And I pay the money and I apply. I go to take the SAT, all that stuff I'm like, my wife wants to like really tenderly like walk my boy, and it's like it's a paradigm shift from it's like what like. Just drive to the thing and park the car. He didn't have a license yet.
If it was important, you know, like, you'd figure it out.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's not quite that's hyperbolically.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what, you know, many of us kind of grew up with, you know.
Right.
So anyway, I get accepted to NC State University. It's the only college I applied to.
Wow.
I got in, and I Christmas treed the last half of the SAT, and I got an 1100 on it. So it was enough to like. I asked the guy, like, "Is this enough to get in?" Yeah, it's probably. I mean, you could take it again and get better. Yeah, but is it good enough to get in? Like, I'm thinking I have to pay $75 and sit here in this like room that doesn't have air conditioning at Hendersonville High School, and like, you know, back several presidents ago, however long ago that was, you know. So, you know, I get in, and my dad decides to go on a little mini 3-day weekend vacation to Atlanta to see Jeff Beck. So not only is he not taking me, he's doing that while I have to make 2 trips back and forth to move myself into a dormitory at Raleigh. So that was my entry into I'm out of the house. But I was so glad to be out from under that it was a really, you know, special freeing time. 2 weeks into my stint at NC State, they had these whiteboards on every dorm room, you know, and I was my best friend at the time that I'd gone to high school with. We were roommates, but he was way into the footballs, and you know, I like football more now than I ever did when I was a kid, you know. But at the time, I just didn't have bandwidth for stuff like that. And so when I finally get to college, he's kind of been hanging out with the football team, and he ended up going into the like sports medicine or training in particular. He does for some like pretty prominent like college football. He's like the equipment manager essentially. He runs that department for them. So he's like a couple of the big schools. So, but all of that to say, he wasn't the friend that I had in high school,
right?
You know, so 2 weeks into that, I get this message on this whiteboard on my dorm that's, come to room such and such, Jim. And it was like 2 floors up or 1 floor up. And I go knock on the door, and it was John Shepard's son, Justin, who I used to go over to John's house and dad with him would jam or fix amps or whatever. And Justin, when I would like play video games upstairs, I mean, I'm sure they were downstairs smoking weed or whatever,
So John Shepard, just to give everybody so they know who it is, that band that I was playing in that your father would, was like doing sound and talking about with us. Right. John Shepard was the guitar player in that band. And that is, so that's the relation. So I knew John through the band, and then that's how I met your father.
Right on. Yeah. Right on.
Neat.
Yeah, it is neat. So I fell in like with a bunch of dudes from Hendersonville and Raleigh. Like I'd never met any of them, or maybe I'd met them a couple of times, Justin and I had been pretty tight, as young kids, and during high school kind of had lost touch, but I still talk to Justin every once in a while. But
really? I saw John the other day.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen John in a while.
Yeah.
But Justin's precious people, man.
Just out of curiosity, had you already started playing the guitar at this point in your life?
Oh, well, see that. So we're jumping all around, but that's that was. My dad was a guitar player, obviously. You know, he was a producer and an engineer at like West Sound Shop and some of the places in Asheville. So I grew up like going in recording studios and stuff. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how to change the oil in my car, but I could solder a Stratocaster pickup pretty early on.
Oh wow!
Or at least understood it enough to burn myself, but maybe you could still hear.
Yeah.
So, Dad wouldn't teach me. Your hands aren't big enough, or you gotta wait till you're older. But Mom had like this like barbed wire Stella like Sears Roebuck guitar laying around. That God, I hope she still has. Lord, I hope she does. That thing's probably worth like $5,000 just because of the time. It's like pre-war stuff, but. At the time, it was like bling, 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 bling,
those things are rough. The people that tried to learn on those things.
I am those
sympathy.
people. Yeah,
that's a rough end.
Yeah, man. My first gig was on one of those. So I'm kidding. It wasn't really. But that's she taught me a handful of chords, and I thought it was cool. And it was just we didn't have like the internet back then. We didn't have cable TV. We might not have even had like TV where we lived. I don't It was until like, other than like, like rabbit ears, like what during the afternoon you could catch Channel 4 and see like maybe when Power Rangers were just first starting to come out kind of thing, I don't know. But it was an early on thing. So probably 7 years old, I was strumming some chords, and Dad like was home. He worked second shift. So I didn't see Dad except for the middle of the night when he would get your report card and wake you up. And if you hadn't got all A's, or if you had like a bad progress report, he'd spank you and wake you up to spank you because Mom wouldn't do it. And so, it was probably 7 years old, and he found out or discovered that I could play. Then he was like, "Oh, we'll do this and do," so he started. It was always sort of a pain thing. I have not thought about this in years. You would think I've got 2 sons that play guitar, and this I had one of those very poignant visuals just now of me sitting in my dad's bedroom with that Fender Bullet that I've got on the wall that my son plays now.
Yeah.
It's had 45 different sets of pickups in it probably at this point. It looks like someone put it in a Jeep and drug it through a cornfield. I mean, it's that's after I cleaned it, but it was a part of my life from then on. It was something that we sort of shared, and it was, I won't say that it was always like the least problematic, but if Dad and I were fishing, or if we were playing music, as long as he was in the driver's seat of what was happening, he was cool.
Yeah.
It didn't help. Didn't hurt to have like a few dozen tall boy ice houses, like that. He was that mellowed whatever, he needed to be, some doctor prescribed to fix, or some sort of actual therapy, mental health was scoffed at.
Yes, it was back then.
It was.
Absolutely.
And my coming to find out, my grandfather's mother on his side was like schizophrenic.
Oh,
like severely mentally ill, like hospital, like bed restrained to a bed kind of deal,
Wow.
Confined to a bed, I guess is a better word. So it had run in my family, but it was real hush hush, like eye roll. Your mom says this, your mom reads all these therapy things, but eye roll with this, it's like, I guess what the kids are calling toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
That was certainly, I mean, my grandfather was chief of staff of Asheville Police in the 90s. He was on the short list to be, I guess, chief of police. And he had some heart issues and he sort of bowed out and retired, but he was like the highest you could rise before being like the top guy. And I used to go on like ride-alongs with him, in the squad cars when I was, real small. So
Wow.
But he was very much the same way.
So you and your dad get along with this guitar thing, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
But then, so now you're 19, you're at NC State, you've seen Justin, but your guitar playing ability has really improved a lot from that time you first learned to this point, right?
Not as much maybe as it could have, but yeah. Absolutely.
Right. And so let's take us back there when you're NC State, you're hanging out with people.
Yeah. I'm hanging out with these guys and that's like a bright spot, but I'm not going to class. Furthermore, I haven't paid for the class. Like I had like an initial scholarship of like $3,000 like per year. And that school was like $7,000 a semester.
Then that wasn't going to get you through.
No. But there wasn't like any help. There wasn't like any follow up. This is called, like, looking back, like now that my kids are there, like how negligent my parents were. But at the time, I was carrying all this guilt and shame for the failures of my life. Up until that point and beyond. And long story short, I flunked out of college. They would have probably let me go back with some sort of like, probation of something. They would have been happy. They want to keep your money. They want to keep you coming. Of
course.
But I didn't have the money to pay for the 6 months I was there and ate and drank chocolate milk on tap. So I flunked out of college. It's the only time that I remember ever feeling suicidal. I remember being at one of the dorms down the street and it had like a balcony, like an outdoor walkway, almost like a motel, like at the beach, and like being on like the second or third story and like thinking how I probably won't do it that way or I wouldn't want to do it that way because it would hurt, but thinking I can't, that was the palatable alternative to coming back home for Christmas break. And my dad eventually finding out that I didn't go to class and fit. Like that was like, I'm going to be murdered. Like it's not just by him, but like the shame of not measuring up to whatever expectations with the rest of the family. My older sister was an overachiever. She responded to the trauma very, very differently than we did. She had different, friend groups and she hung out with a neighbor a lot. So I think she got an inside scoop on what like functional families kind of look at, or at least way more than ours was. The dad was a pastor. And so she had really high ideals. So you mix that with a critical atmosphere and you get pharisaical like attitudes and stuff. So my sister was like top of the class, always this, that, and the other. She's got like a chemical engineering degree and she was always.
Yeah, that's not one of them pretend degrees. Not that any of them are easy, but that's chemical engineering is.
No, yeah. I've heard that there's only like one day of macaroni art and the rest is like real work. So it's so it was like you're falling short and I'm glad that I didn't, of course, go through with any sort of plan, but that was, I just sort of determined in myself that I was going to tell my dad and I came home and he had cooked a meal and it was like, there were some good times. There were some jovial, we laughed a lot and stuff, but I remember it being like a nice time together. I need to tell you something, Dad. I need to become real. In my mind, I'm really like envisioning this like really sweet, like acceptance, like, I've lived through some adult things at this point, man.
Yeah.
Like I'm dealing with adult consequences of my actions in this life. I don't need you to ground me over stuff.
Right.
I didn't articulate it that way. I wish that I potentially would have. I don't not that would have made a difference, but I don't.
It's not your fault.
It's not. Thank you.
It's not your fault.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Sorry. That's. So he did. He like, oh yeah, we're gonna get through it. I appreciate you being honest with me, and I had such hope. It was like, well, I'm like, oh, what a relief, and like some support. And then like he went to sleep and slept it off and went to work, and he came back home so goddamn mad at me.
Yeah.
And like proceeded to ground an 18-year-old who's been buying their own clothes and food for 3 years, you know? But I was so terrified of him that it wasn't like I was going to like, well, hell with you, I'm not doing this,
Sure.
And a few days went by and I decided I couldn't handle it anymore. So I reached out to my friend Steven, and he came and picked me up in the middle of the night, and I brought my shotgun with me, and just in case.
Yeah.
And he took me over to his house to stay for a few nights, and my dad actually found out where I was and came to their door and like almost like got arrested for like he didn't like go to blows, but he was like going to drag my ass out of that house. That's why I brought the shotgun.
Yeah.
So I'll shake a little while I'm giving. Some of this stuff is still
okay.
like, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So a few days of that go by, and I decide I want to go home, and I call him, and he's like, you know, well, come on back and we'll talk about it. And then the next day he's, you know, locking me down again, like I'm a child, you know. On New Year's Eve that year, that would have been what, 2020, I guess it was New Year's. So going into 2001, the year before, this is the year before the 9/11.
Okay.
Essentially, the Christmas before the New Year's Eve, he wouldn't let me go out. Like I was, you know, grounded, and I had to run some sort of errand, and I ran into a friend down the road that I'd grown up with. I had two friends. I had my friend Dustin and another friend, and we were all kind of tight. And Dustin and I really bonded because, looking back now, we were both experiencing very similar things, and often it seems to be a thing with people that they kind of attract to one another.
They gravitate towards one
it's
another.
Community. I think it's us healing each other as well.
Yes.
It's that tendency. But I know I'm bouncing all over the
No,
place.
dude,
man.
you're actually on target.
So where was I? Oh, okay. So
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve, I go and I get some marijuana, and I smoke it in my room. And I have smoked marijuana in that bedroom like hundreds of times as a child. Like, and no one said. I mean, it wasn't like allowed. You know, my dad had this weird sense of like, you know, bipolar, like what's like morally wrong. Like some of the stuff that he would do, stealing tools from work, but the neighbor had a black cable box that you could see all the channels, and he flipped out that I brought that into his house. I mean, it was the same guy that would do some of this abusive stuff had to watch Billy Graham. You know, it's weird religion stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it is goofy. It is absolutely goofy. So I smoked, and well, everybody in the house apparently could smell it. And he told me to call my mom, and maybe I would be able to stay with her, but he was done with me. He was kicking me out. So I got kicked out of my house. I'm 19.
Forgive the intrusion, but thank God.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So slowly but surely, you know, I'm sort of making my own way, trying to get a foothold, and living with my mom wasn't a whole lot better. At this time she had married another gentleman who was affluent, at least compared by our standards, but he was also pretty mentally ill. And as I started to sort of grow in, you know, stature in terms of like my estate, like trying to get my feet where I'm having my own place and that kind of thing, I moved out with a friend and sort of worked my way up. That's where I met Andy. Was staying with Molly and Kev. Remember Molly and Kevin? Yeah. That's how I met Molly, because I was renting a room from them over in Laurel Park. That's how I met Andy. And he came over to the house. And
it's always fun when people tell me how I met them, because I don't remember shit.
No, I remember this. This is a funny story. This is a very Andy story, I think, if I do say so myself. But I had like remember those like Tascam like 4-track people would record on cassette tape. So I had like whatever version of whatever demo I was working on at the time. I was always cooking up something, you know. And she was like, "Oh, you need to hook up with my friend Andy. He was like he records people. He went to school for it." I was like, "Oh, he did," you know. And he like comes into my like basement that has like overflowed sewage sometimes, and I've got this like 4-track and play it. And he was like, "I'll tell you what, you make me a fat sandwich and I'll record that for you." It was something like that. Like, what do you charge? Like, you just made me a real fat sandwich.
I think I was working out of my bedroom at that time, so a sandwich is probably about what.
Can confirm.
Probably proper exchange at that point.
I don't know how many. It's probably not as many as some sessions I've done for Andy, but I can tell you that we had to lean his mattress off of the floor and against the wall for more floor space.
Yeah, you got to make room.
Got to open the
right.
studio.
Got to make room.
That was his form of the sign.
Early days.
The early days, indeed. But shortly I'm realizing the depth of. Well, let me back up. My dad dies the next Christmas. And I don't talk to him for nearly that whole time. And he invited me over maybe 3 months before he went, something like that. And he just wanted to have me over, and he was just very somber and very like introspective, and like he apologized to me for a lot of things. I didn't at the time. The fond response. Oh, so you did? It's okay. You had a lot. Like to join there, almost like Stockholm syndrome. But to his credit, he owned a lot of, without saying specific things, he owned that he was a shitty dad, essentially.
Yeah.
Oh, is it okay to curse on this podcast?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
Okay.
I mean, you guys have been
Take it out.
you guys dropping F-bombs. He knows how to hit the little.
I want you to just bleep the words that like make it sound like I'm saying weird stuff.
Well, he says when he bleeps it, it actually makes it worse.
I swear, a full edit sounds worse to me than a swear does.
Yeah.
It sounds harder and more, what's the right word? I was going to say caustic, but that's not the word in my head. It sounds,
It just brings more attention to it.
It brings more attention
A lot
to
of times it just, you say the word and it just goes over right through.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah,
you beep
that's
it, then you're
true.
like,
Yeah, then it's like, what did he say?
yeah.
Oh, it was so bad it had to be beeped?
Well,
Well,
so yes, you just talk. Don't worry about what you're
Okay,
saying. We're
well-
good.
yeah. I mean, if it's like certain things like the F-bomb I did intentionally drop for humor purposes a minute ago,
But
I will cut those.
We're going to beep
but-
it out because we do have kids that listen to it.
Fair enough. Okay.
So
well,
good.
I'll be a little bit more.
No,
Yeah.
it's really
So
fine.
F
Just
you kids.
Be you.
Yeah. I spelled that with an EFF, so it's not the same.
I love replacement words because I'm not sure why that makes a difference.
I know it
Yes.
doesn't at all.
A man and a woman.
So your father,
My
has
father
passed.
dies, and at this point, I've gotten an opportunity. I've had an experience where I was invited to play with the singer of that band where we burned all those CDs in the basement. Right,
Yeah.
he's involved in this Baptist church. That's where I met the Stipes, Derek and Kevin. That's how I met those cats, because they were involved with like the Mud Creek Church, and there was a little bit of like cross pollination in town. And I got to play guitar for their like youth service. I'd never been to anything remotely like that kind of church. Like it just wasn't my thing. But they're just playing all these songs in the key of E, and I was like, well, I mean, I can just like melt this place down in the key of E. Like make sure hold on your oxygen mask are in the seat compartments behind you, and like I remember finishing like the first time around, and like people's eyes being like gigantic, and I wasn't there for Jesus, I was
Right.
there because they wanted me to go play guitar. There was free pizza, and there was girls who were technically too young for me, but they were girls.
They were girls, yeah.
So, I had an experience later on that night as they're doing like they do a lot of like breakout, like it's very casual. They have like a bonfire in the parking lot, but for whatever reason, it struck me like I was very cynical. I wasn't any sort of sincere, like I'm a Jesus follower. I'd had this experience with watching Billy Graham and saying this prayer, but I wasn't, when I met Andy, I was in this state. Like I was a pot smoking, like you don't even probably remember having to run me down for money. Like I would book sessions for you, and you would like have to like wait for me to come in the coffee shop. You were like, hey, can I have the $50 you owe me from like September?
Yeah.
I was not the greatest cat, but I was teaching guitar at the time. And
Yeah, I feel like you were always teaching guitar ever since I knew you.
well, that was pretty early on. I got an opportunity. Bill Altman talked to Mike and said, you need to let this kid, I was coming to a lot of Bill's shows, and you need to let this kid teach on
Mike at Tempo.
Tempo
Music,
Tempo
which
Music,
is it's been a story in history forever.
So I just started teaching on the weekends there. And
Triple Murder. Do you know about the Tempo Music Triple Murder?
I don't.
Oh, it's from the 60s. Look it up in Google. It's still unsolved. The original owner of Tempo Music.
Well, that would explain a lot of things. I spent a lot of time in the loft of that building. So, I'm kidding.
So you were teaching guitar.
I was
at
teaching
Tempo.
guitar. Dad dies, and I kind of just go like it was almost like you see them like you remember when the Saddam Hussein statue was pulled down?
Yeah, I do.
I remember this is sort of out of pocket here, but I remember being at work and I was drawing houseplants at the time, and I lived like a quarter mile from my house, and I just walked back and forth, and I just got the strongest notion to go home and watch TV, like for my lunch break. Sometimes I would go home and make a sandwich and come back, but I just really felt like as soon as I turned on the TV, there's like picture of them like yanking that statue down, and then the people like celebrating in the streets. And that's how it felt when my dad died. It was like I'm not going to run into him at a store. Like, he was that terrifying to me. I joke with my kids, like, I would have never overslept for anything if they could have made an alarm clock that sounded like, get up out of that bed, or whatever that was. So,
because it's in a wild adrenaline shot.
It is.
Yes.
My grandfather was a feeble 70-pound-year-old man, and I didn't want to go talk to him because I was afraid of him.
Sure.
And look, I mean, I can handle myself. That's not like a problem for me usually in most contexts, but I was terrified of that guy.
Yeah, of course.
So when my dad died, it was like the removal of all restraint, and I just sort of went wild into drugs and as I look back now, self-medicating what was basically coming out of a very traumatic event.
Sure.
It's taken me into the last couple of years, really in the last 6 months.
Man, I can't even, it takes forever, right?
Maybe even in the last month, literally month, that I'm coming to grips with how horrendous my childhood was, because it was so, you don't know different. If, the worst thing that's ever happened to a kid is the worst thing that's ever happened to that kid, and that's, it's relative.
Yeah.
We are resilient, we humans,
Yes.
So, and in that depth, I was doing coke. I was showing up drunk. I mean, I was like teaching guitar. I mean, I got like $8,000 from his like life insurance policy. I thought I was rich. I mean, I was buying coke from dudes with M16s. I mean, I was like,
this is funny because you've told me about this portion of your life before, and I knew you during it, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And it's still hard for me to imagine it.
Well, I appreciate that. Or maybe we should go back there. But I had this apartment down the road here, over behind Mud Creek Baptist Church. It was like a garage apartment, like a mother-in-law apartment. And that thing, it was like, you think about like studios the Beatles were hanging out with, where the Stones were coming in, the kind of hangs they would have after sessions, or like what, that's what that apartment was like. I mean, we were like writing shit on the walls with Sharpie, and
those houses are fun. I hate to say it.
Yeah. I mean, and that you went to that apartment at least once or twice, but I was doing coke, and this, one of my guitar students was an elder at this church. And I knew he was Christian, and I cleaned it up for him,
of course.
Kind of code switched for him. But because while having not been church or going to church my whole childhood, it wasn't, I still felt the like, well, I'm supposed to do this, or I'm supposed, so there was this, because my grandparents went to church. They went to Methodist churches, so. What was I saying?
You were talking about the elderly man that you were, not the elder of the church that you were teaching.
He sees that I'm having a hard time. And he can tell, and I get rough with him in a lesson. I say that like I was just frustrated and impatient, and I like was sort of short with him, and like maybe picked up his finger and moved. And this guy was like a bodybuilder, and like he later on told me like he had to like sort of squelch his anger there for a second because he wanted to put my head through the wall, with the way I treated him. But he had compassion on me instead, like we were talking earlier. Mm-hmm. And he started fasting for me and praying for me, every morning. Like he already got up at like 5 a.m. He was getting up at like 4 a.m, and he like didn't eat for 2 weeks and just prayed for me. And at the end of that 2-week period of time, I had this, for lack of a better word, encounter while high on mushrooms in my apartment where we were just talking about. And that's hard for people to hear.
Sure.
Later on, I'll tell you some connections to that, but not saying that
you're going to tell us your mushroom connection.
Absolutely.
It's Creepy Dave.
Creepy Dave. I love Creepy Dave.
It's too much mushrooms.
The ploppity puss.
The ploppity puss. Anyway, I'll let him know you'll call. So, I had this like experience, like it was like a vision. Mm-hmm. I saw some like images of things that were to come in my future that have since come to pass. I saw like just almost like in a dream where it's like you can tell something in the periphery, but you can't like zoom right in on it. I had some images, and then I had just a sense of he was with me. And so I just sort of started talking and waiting for answers. And what I was getting to was, man, if you're so damn real, if you're like this entity that's this big, like, let's have a conversation. Like, show yourself. I don't want like reading some like weird paged book or sitting on these pews and not really getting all this culture that I'm going to these like Baptist church events. I don't want to be like these people. This doesn't feel, if I'm playing the game or if I'm using the lingo, it's just code switching. It's not sincere. Like, I want to know you. Talk to me. I know you're, but like if you're going to expect me to adhere to all, at the time, my mindset was adhere to all these rules, or, I need your help. If you love me, like, where are you?
Yeah, of course. And
this peace filled my, like, my whole everything, and I cried when I was a kid and prayed the prayer with Billy Graham, but it wasn't like this. It was a unique, like, he was there. Like, I just had a visitation. Like, I just hung out with him. He made himself manifest. So he was like, he was Aslan that came from around the bushes. Like, so when we had a pretty long conversation, and it wasn't like in the way that we articulate back together, it was just more like knowing. It was like you see in the movies where like the aliens communicate with
right.
That sounds insane, I know, especially since I'm talking about freaking Dave.
Yeah.
That's all I can. It
I've
was
heard people talk about this,
spirit
like,
to
while on
spirit.
ketamine.
It bypassed my emotions, which is, I believe, why the altered state of consciousness helped. It helped whatever trauma response built up a callus around whatever that thing was. The mushrooms got me to a place where he was like, he could get, like,
right, pulled it right
hey,
up for you.
I've not gone anywhere, but it was almost like he was like, I can't really do anything for you at this point. If you keep doing these things, like, there's bad stuff going to happen. I was starting to like dabble in selling drugs, and I was like having just really, I was going down a bad road, not just legally, but just in a bankrupting area. I was a mess, an absolute mess. And I took him at his word. I took him seriously, because it was like, okay, I asked you to show yourself, and you did. Okay.
Yeah.
And you weren't mean to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You were just kind, but also, I have to tell you this. Nice to meet you in this way. You can't keep doing this, or there's going to be like, I can't. It was almost like I've held back all that I can legally hold back from you, and shit's about to hit the fan. And right as I made a pivot where I stopped, the drug use, I stopped a handful of other activities that were just destructive. Like, it was like the fire just nipped my clothes. Like, I got popped with some marijuana and then ended up missing a court date and had to spend a night in jail. And it was like, shit was getting real. Like, I had to actually I had to call my boss or the pastor at the church where I played guitar in their youth band to come bail me out of jail. I was in a rough spot. So I stopped some things, and it showed me how close. I lost my driver's license for like 4 years. I mean, it was a rough start to adulthood. And in my mind, it was all my own shame of my own failures. Now I can look back. But
yeah, you were just carrying that on. Absolutely.
So from then on, that's more whatever that guy was trying to be. That's the closest thing to what you two probably met back in those days. I believe we're different versions of ourselves as you grow and mature.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in there, but it's almost like the Doctor Who thing. Like, it's like it's all his memories and stuff, but I'm so different than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago,
Yeah, absolutely.
But, sorry to get emotional, but
well, no, I mean, whenever we have we have an encounter with the Almighty, it's still in there too, isn't it? You're still feeling it now.
Absolutely. Well, he's here now.
He is.
But the natural place to go was to the church that this dude, like, hell,
Yeah.
this guy prayed, and he saw the difference. And I started asking him questions, and it was like he was taking his whole lesson, buying extra lessons just to sit and teach me Bible stuff and want to talk to me. And so,
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, he was really like, I had never had anybody like take an interest, and he knew shit. Like, I would ask him the questions that you ask somebody, like, you know, and he would have answers for stuff, like, and he would be able to rattle it off. And this guy was well studied. Like, he you know, did his homework. He loved God, and he knew him. And well, naturally, wherever you're hanging out, that's where we want to go.
Yeah.
And then we ended up going to, looking back now, what was, I don't know who's going to hear this, so I'll refer. It was, there were some elements that would be hard for you to not read the Merriam-Webster definition of cult and not say that's what that was.
Sure.
It's hard for me, and it was a very natural transition into going from the trauma of my childhood into this trauma.
I was connecting those dots in my head.
Yeah, well, you could have told me that 20 years ago and saved me, like, I don't know, like $2,000 in therapy.
I don't think I knew the story. And you know what? 20 years ago, much stupider.
Much stupider indeed for on my end. Oh man.
So you get involved at this place. Now you've just had this amazing shift in your life, and this person has done this fast and this prayer, and of course you would go where he's shown you love.
Yeah.
So of course you would go. And so now that's something that you weren't getting from your father. So you've had an experience with the Father. You're getting somebody who is a male who is giving you this, you know, acting.
I know you're building to a point, but I'd like to point out that bipolars do love in very much, and that's part of why that's part of the trap, baby.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
That's part of the trap.
Right. But I'm just saying, I don't know that the guy that was talking to him was bipolar.
Oh, I thought you were referring back to his dad.
No, well, I was saying that for him, because of a child and what you looked towards for your father and what he'd received, then he has this actual encounter with the Father, like the Almighty. Because this other man has prayed and fasted for you, I know that the lessons are coming, that what he did.
Hold on. I'm so sorry. Let's let Jim work. This is going to... Oh, let me come in. I'll have to come in. Those stands are actually not cheap. Also, I hate them. Oh, is it going to stay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've actually done that one time before. I've adjusted a microphone. Just one.
Well, that stand, like, you just about have to vice grip the damn thing down to get it not to, like, ugh.
I have a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
I can't have nice things.
Right. But what I'm connecting is that what this man did for you, I'm not saying that they're going to use that against you, but that's going to play in the next steps, because now what he did, it was almost like miraculous.
It was, absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
So from that point, now when you go into this, regardless what we want to call it, cult or whatever it is, you're going to begin to go all into this. Am I right or no?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Hook,
So you're
line, and sinker.
There it is.
I'm as close as I'll ever get to this approval that I need.
Yes.
I'm
right.
This is the way. These are the people. There was, you know, I really don't want to throw folks under the bus.
Omit, or if you say something you don't want to say, tell me.
Yeah. There were some good things to all of it and to all of them.
There always is.
And legit. And I learned a lot of good things. I learned this particular organization kind of goes the way of church is a business, man. It's a big business, you know. And I own a business, so I understand that.
Yeah,
so
rent's not cheap.
Rent's not cheap, and it's not getting any cheaper. And but also, you know, you're doing a service for people, but Duke Power doesn't care what kind of change you make in the life of a soul.
Sure. They
will turn it off. Don't ask me how I know that.
Yeah.
They will absolutely turn the power off. So I was receiving something from this organization, and that's what made it so hard to see all the dysfunction.
Of course.
You know, so I'm working 70 hours a week-ish, building and starting a business and trying to make a living teaching guitar. You know, I've abandoned.
Were you still were you still working out of the music store, or are you moved on by this point?
That's a good question. That's sort of dovetailed out. I was like, I kind of like truncated down to like maybe one day there. And like, then it was like, I sort of just made the jump at a certain point. They were the only source of new work. And then once I figured out you could like advertise on your own, I was like, oh, I no longer need you. I'm going to get air conditioning.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. You know? So, I guess I moved to that little spot in the parsonage you were talking about earlier. It was like just big enough. It was about the size of this room, I would say, you know, but it was like, had a big bay window facing west. So then the air conditioner did no good for the time of day that I used the room, because it was just sunsetting in these like 100-year-old windows. Yeah. So, that's where I was at that point. So the dysfunction in this particular church, my first introduction to being like involved with church, like on a regular basis, was like, it started off, there was this one pastor guy, he was in charge, and I liked him a lot. He actually married us, you know. He seemed a lot more emotionally stable, and maybe a year into the whole thing, maybe 2 years into it. By then I'm playing guitar for them. You know, I didn't do that for about a year. I just sort of attended and proved myself. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. They want you to do, like, you got to clean up the trash first, and then before you, it's like, and I understand that too. Like, I don't disagree with that, but it can be real, you know, we like our rules, you know, we like our hierarchy. We like to
welcome to the human race.
We've got to be able to like quantify value of you and me. We've got to, right?
That's right.
So you amplify that with none of us are measuring up to that. That's why that terminology kind of rakes me just a little bit, you know, because it's like, well, hang on, it's like that's not healthy for me,
right?
You know, with my background, but that's the environment that it was. So meanwhile, my wife is raising the 3 sons we've popped out in, you know, like 3.5 years or something like that. So we went from, you know, I went from that environment with my dad and going to kill myself at NC State to, you know, being a homeowner, business owner, family of 5 in like 5 years. I'm 24 and missing house payments and in over my head. I mean, it was a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So they were a support system. By then we had like developed this family of people. So it was like, we're in the weeds, man. You know, it was, you'll put up with all sorts of stuff. And they would, you know, at the time I thought it was just such an honor. You know, I was, the pesos that they paid me, or, you know, like it was a lot of it was expected to be volunteer, but they would do nice things for you and you would consider it to be a real honor. So looking back now, it was sort of just played into this same sort of childhood, just, you know, and eventually it kind of came to a head where they lost credibility with me. I saw it for what it was. And what's funny is these things were coming to a head. My mental health due to my trauma, my wife's, we're in this like boiling pot of this thing where you can't go. Because I'm at this point, I'm
3
I'm
kids,
like,
things are tight.
I'm paid staff at this place. The only, you know, I'm a high school graduate, barely, you know, I lived in the dorms at NC State, you know, I had the audacity to show up for the chemistry exam. And the guy was like, here you go. Like, he's like, I don't even know who you are. Like, he probably thought I was like some dude from like the street or something. I don't know. He didn't know me.
You're the kid that somebody hired to come in and pass the test for him.
Apparently. Yeah. I mean, I definitely got to look like you're not one of us.
You're not from here.
Exactly. Don't remember seeing you at all. Sorry. I had to go there.
Yeah. So they've lost credibility in your mind.
I can't stay anymore. And towards the end, the mental health things that were bubbling up out of my life were coming to a head. And I mean, I was like smoking cigarettes and it was like a thing, you know.
Yeah, of course.
You know, or drinking alcohol or whatever. And of course there's problems with that go beyond those symptoms of the problems,
Sure.
but that was enough to, you know, whatever, like one-on-one mentoring that I was in this organization, like he felt like that was over his head. He didn't know what to do. So he just like, I would confide in this guy and then he would like, just come to find out he told the dude that lives like 3 states away, who's like an ex-Marine. And it's like, it's just picking all my goddamn scabs. I mean, it's just like, and so they send me to this like week-long prayer retreat thing where they like, you have to fill out this application. You got to go down in your family history, your lineage. It deals with like the legality of, like the spiritual rights of the good sides and the bad, you know.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, it was incredibly impactful. Don't get me
Yeah, of
wrong. I
course.
mean, what brought me to the faith was experiencing him, like, for him, okay, smoke and mirror, whatever, like, be that or be real, or I'm not going to pretend, you know.
Sure.
Sorry. it's emotional, and it's also, it's so much was happening. They sent me to this prayer, like, counseling week, and I had a lot of those same sorts of experiences with God, and like he was like sort of putting some dots together for me, you know, and some of the struggles I had with my marriage and with parenting and just me in general, you know. And it was a really powerful time. And then we come back to this church and we realized how gross it felt. Like, it was like these Christian people, like, they didn't have an agenda other than we want to help you. We want to love you. It was, you know, there was a mental health component to it just by, I mean, that's, our souls are what they are. You know, he's interfering. He's interfacing with me one-on-one. He knows more than a therapist would ever know.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that that's a substitution thereof, but
Right.
you know, that's kind of how he showed me myself and him during that week. And we get back to this church and realized how much the dude that I'm hanging out with is not in like sections Z through, you know, WW or whatever, you know, like there's a lot of stuff here that isn't him. It's just people and it's the humans, man.
Yeah.
The humans have been here, you know,
Yes.
and that's that. I tell my kids all the time, the humans are undefeated.
Yeah.
You know, no, you damn humans, you know, it's the humans. They've been here, you know.
Humans are undefeated. That's funny.
It is. Well, I'm gonna write a song about that one day, or get a tattoo. But it's true. But in both sides of the pendulum, there, you know, they can be incredible too. Is to the same degree that they can be incredibly bad.
Yeah.
So, at a certain point, they're going to make me like the campus pastor. I mean, everything has gone on in this church, from splits to like pastors like literally walking up after the songs are played, like he's going to preach the message, and then he like just walks out the door and his family follows him. I'm like, the hell is this? Like, this feels just right. Like, of course there's drama, you know. The guy that led the music was having an affair with the piano player, and like it was like everything that you would. I mean, it was like a caricature. It was like the Dana Carvey had to have been there at some point, you know.
What's that thing on HBO about the televangelist? It's
the Righteous Gemstones.
Righteous. I won't say it's funny because it's really not my sort of thing, but it's well written.
Yeah. It's probably more accurate than you realize. You know what I'm saying? Danny McBride.
No, you have to send it to me.
Oh, it's on HBO.
Okay.
Yeah, or Max now.
Yeah, I'll be watching some Max.
Righteous Gemstones.
Okay. Oh, I've seen that advertised. I know.
It's really well written. I have another person whose humor is very difficult for me personally, but it is objectively well written.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. So they were going to make me like the camp. Like at this point, there's been also like the vice president of like sales at Kyocera is the campus pastor at a certain point. You know, that's the dude that just told the Marine about my struggles. I confided with him in a one-on-one, like,
wow.
You know, yeah. So they lose credibility with me because I realized like the closer I got to like the internal workings of how shit worked, I was like, oh. And I felt ashamed. Now, granted, they were a support system, and I had a lot of good encounters with God, and I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, at that
But you started off being cynical of the church anyway.
Yeah.
So you've had this experience. Now you're back to being cynical.
Well, I had this experience with God. It was like, okay, I wanted to be 100% open. Oh, this is what's required. Mm-hmm. Okay. I threw everything I had at it, because if it's going to,
I 100% remember the Jim Beaver that threw everything.
That was an intolerable Jim Beaver. That my poor wife had to live with that Jim Beaver.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to live with that Jim Beaver.
You once told me that I wasn't a believer. No, let's not get emotional, because I'm going to tell you something. This is an amazing story. We were playing at the South Rock, and we were talking about speaking in tongues, and I don't have the gift, you know, and I was like, I don't have the gift, Jim. And you're like, everybody has the gift. And I was like, I don't have the gift, Jim. I don't have it. I'm not going to lie about it. And you're like, no, come on. And then we had that communication. And at the end of it, I was like, Jim, I don't have the gift. And you said, then you don't have the Holy Spirit. You can't be a believer. And I went home that night and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, I can't find that anywhere in the Bible. So I poured through it and tried to find it and never did. And realized that whatever you had been taught, and maybe somebody has found some nuance in the scripture to be able to teach it that way.
Right. Shade it that way.
But you'd taken that hook, line, and sinker.
And memorized it and was ready to debate and
absolutely
in the interest of fixing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing that it taught me was that I was going to always refer back to the word, and I was going to always read it for myself, and I was going to trust in that to the best of my ability. And it didn't affect my relationship with you whatsoever, because I knew, because I've had similar situations where I believed something so dogmatically that, you know, it affected a relationship.
Being right was more important than anything else.
Oh God,
Yeah.
I've done that so many times, being so dogmatic. But I loved you then. I love you now. Every iteration of Jim Beaver has always been one of my favorite people.
Well, so I feel the same way about you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to say that out loud together. That was cool.
That's for real,
bro.
We're fist bumping.
We're fist bumping
we'll hug
across.
when it's over with. No.
I might even kiss you on the cheek.
I'm ashamed a little bit of that. Because I mean, you're not telling me anything that I'm sure, you know.
Oh, I didn't tell you to give you shame.
Of course not. What I'm trying to say is,
I was just trying to embarrass you on the air.
Well, that was in my writers. A thousand brown M&Ms and
what you didn't know that this entire thing was really just so he could confront you about that one thing.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
All right, and the guy shows up with like a dart gun. Like, what? Yeah,
no, it just goes to show you that believers get dogmatic at different stages. We all go through these iterations and we hurt one another.
Yeah,
but we can still love one another, and still do.
Well, I really alienated a lot of people during that time. I was pretty intense. You know, I was also
been there, done that.
Yeah,
I did my family. Like I alienated my whole family.
Yeah,
regret it.
Yeah,
I lost 20 years of my life because of it with them. But now I have a wonderful relationship with my family.
Well,
I'm thankful.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, let me fast forward a little bit and get you guys home. But essentially, we leave, and then it's like, I mean, it's like those people that they find in what was it, a few years ago? They found those poor women like had been locked in the guy's like basement, and they got out of the garage and like went and found a neighbor, and it was like, oh my God, these people have been. It was. I mean, we weren't held against our will, but emotionally,
they knew they couldn't leave.
It was like when I went to tell the dude, ended up being his son, which was a whole other convoluted thing. I didn't want the job to begin with, but I had like, they had told me that they were going to be moving in that direction for me to be in charge of this thing, this branch or whatever of the triangle,
right?
And they chose their son instead, which I was fine with, but like. At that point, I had just like, it was sour grapes. I was like Frodo with the wound. Like you're gonna have to get on the boat, dude. Yeah. It's not gonna heal here, you know. I just had lost all credibility, you know. And you can be really like gifted and prophetic and still be really emotionally unhealthy. You know what I mean? There's a lot of very charismatic. Like I'm sure there's messages that I've heard that are really that God attached to, that God would affirm. Like I feel like, hey, that's for you right there. That applies to that kind of stuff. And that person have like really weird stuff going on in their lives. You know, the gifts of callings of God are without repentance. You know, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so
I mean, look at Jim Jones was that way.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this guy could walk in and read your mail. Like he could just like, he had a gift, like not all the time, but like there were times where he could read your mail, but he was also so charismatic, and it just picked that, particular thing that I needed. And I just, sacrificed many years of my life to helping them, working several hours, hours and hours a month running their, and at some point, I believe keeping their little branch alive.
Sure.
Paying me pesos to do it, I felt guilty for taking,
Of course,
while I'm, and guilting me into, not spending time with my family. And the alternative to like, I need to take a break from this so that I can go make more money, being like, well, you have a decision to make. You don't have to run a business. You can go get a job like that. where would I be if I'd taken that damn advice?
Right.
And the intent of that advice wasn't for me. It was, they need me because I'm keeping the lights on in this place. This is how I felt about it, So I go to leave and I have to like argue with the guy. Like I was like, I'm letting you know, like I'm going to step down from this position. At that point I was, I think the actual position was worship leader. Essentially I was a worship pastor, and the length of time, I was one of the, at least a big part of the leadership at least had my ear as far as decision making. I wasn't like in charge, but at that local place I had a lot of influence.
Sure.
And at this point, the population of the church had dwindled down from like 200-300 down to like 40 or something like that. And so it was like me and a guitar trying to play like these like power pop songs in this room with a bunch of reverb and loopers. And, it was like, it was hard to do. And it was really, you didn't want to invite somebody to come see that. And meanwhile, I'm watching, social media is a thing now. So I'm watching all these people that are like, not as good at the instrument as I am, or don't have as much talent as I am, like doing all this fun, crazy, cool stuff. And I'm playing like Hillsong to the grandma who's going to tell my wife that she needs to lose a little bit of weight.
Yeah, of course.
Or whatever, So that was our life. So we get out of that situation and we're like, it feels like the last, several years we've been trying to figure out separating the meat from the bones, because we had experiences. I know it's God, but you can't throw away the baby with the bathwater. So I got really cynical. In 2019, my elderly grandparents had begun to pass away, the one and then the other, and right in the middle of the pandemic, 2020, my grandmother passed away. We moved out to initially take care of their farmhouse and inherit it, in a manner of speaking. So we moved out and about an hour away from my business and an hour away from anyone we knew. And then COVID hit. So, I got really like insular. I didn't leave the house. And it was almost like I came to this crash landing, the business was doing well. I was making money. We weren't like having to fight about that. It wasn't a source of stress. So I was able to chill, and, COVID hit. I was glad. Like, great, everyone. Like, there's going to be no demand for me to go
leave
anywhere.
me alone.
Leave me. I could have gone forever. It would have been fine. I spent 2 weeks in terror. Like, I'm going to lose my livelihood, and had to like create like an online school model and like coach my not tech savvy like office staff who were primarily just deal with like personal stuff. Personality meet and greet and handling big stuff. I had to walk them through and create that. Once that was and we got the crisis out of the way there, it was just like I could go on like this forever, and so my kids start getting involved with this church locally there, and I'm like, man, nobody knows who I am. Like in Hendersonville, there maybe not now, but there was a time where I couldn't go anywhere without running into somebody I knew, whether it was a positive, and with like I don't particularly enjoy having to have impromptu conversations. Some of the results of my trauma, you'll hear me stammer a little bit. I'm learning a lot about myself over the last couple of years as I've been going to therapy.
We have a lot more in common than you realize, because I have the gift of gab and I love to talk and I'm on a podcast and all that, but I don't want people just walking up talking to me. When I'm in public, I want to do my thing and I want to go back home. Like I'm a homebody.
You don't want to be obligated to turn it on all the time.
I know.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
it.
I'm the same way, and I have people recognize there's a reasonable amount of places I can go to this day. People recognize.
So people
me
who know me on this podcast, if you come up to talk to me and I'm real nice to you, I really don't mean it. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's not.
I mean, when I'm at home and I know people. I mean
out in public, and it's not. I'll run into people I genuinely like, but I just don't feel like being that guy.
Yeah. I came to the grocery store to
to
get coffee, but that person was there, so I went to go get some chicken salad instead. Yeah.
It's just awkward. And running a business too, like you see the good and bad and ugly of everybody.
Sure.
So I taught a certain prominent how should we say this? Litigator for not litigator.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Legislator. I won't name any names, but a certain very right wing, very prominent
Local.
You talking about the one that came to my shop that I almost had on here and you didn't want him here? Is that the same one?
Yeah, same one.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
He's not in it anymore.
Right.
He's gone.
That's cool. Well, he Yeah, I taught him guitar, and that was the first family I ever fired. Like, I actually told them, like, and when you're as poor as we were, his family, this person's family. Maybe you cut this out of the podcast.
Nope.
I'll tell this.
We're going to leave it.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. It gets a little deeper. Maybe.
Hey, you didn't say any names. Doesn't matter anyway. He's
Yeah.
a public figure.
Well, that's true. That's true. But they were very entitled, and I was, to tell someone that you don't want their money when you're living off of that paycheck, that you're buying diapers with that, means that they've become altogether intolerable.
Yes.
And it had to do with like money and when they paid and whether it was on time. Some of the same stuff you hear about that whole sect of,
Yeah.
At any rate, fast forward to like last year, I had like this sign I'd put together, like it's like PVC pipe, like frame, like built, and it'd been up for a long time, and then like it just went missing, and there was a big political like advertisement poster of this particular person.
Oh, really?
Completely gone, just gone.
Wow.
And I talked to the landlords, like, I don't know what to think about it. Like, you don't have cameras? Like, nah, man, we didn't.
Wow, somebody just took the sign down,
and
then another sign appeared there.
They didn't like lay it on the ground or like put it somewhere. Like, it's gone, like the dumpster, I guess. But it was like a little bit of an expensive kind of thing to just lose,
Sure.
But it was more the principle of the thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't know. Miriam has theories because I got a little bit vocal on social media about some political stuff. Because mind you, when all of that shit was going on, I'm coming out and healing from this, and like I'm spending a lot of time with God. If I spend time with God, it's at home alone.
Yeah.
But that's becoming like few and far between. I end up getting just really cynical and really mad, and I felt like, I moved out there. I didn't play guitar for like a year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
You didn't play guitar?
Not much. I would pick it up and be like, if I felt like playing, I'd try a couple. And like, it's going to take me 3 weeks to get in shape to do that. All or nothing, Jim. So, but there was a lot of things to do around this old farmhouse that had been neglected. That sort of
hard
stuff
work is great too.
Yeah, it's really rewarding.
I love it.
And it's
hard work is great.
I learned how to I learned how like combustion engines worked and like fixed equipment, and like it was a cool, like I have this like elaborate like storage creation for like all my yard tools, because it's like a 3-acre farmhouse out in nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, super jelly, by the way. Beautiful.
Well, you can come anytime. And
I would love to see
Dude,
it. Really. I mean, I don't leave this approximate half acre ever. Probably not quite a half, but that's not the point.
Our friends come take vacations at our house.
You know what? You should build a bonfire out there, and we'll come out there and just like hang.
Hey, you name the time.
Let's do it.
I've got a fire pit and everything.
I'll even drive and bring you back.
I'd love that.
But you know what? I just did the same thing. Like you, I'm telling you, we have a similarity. I got very cynical. I left. I didn't play the piano for almost 2 years. I didn't touch it at all. And then I bought a building. I built like an annex, on my company, Omnihawk, the hatchet company.
Yeah.
And so I bought another building, and the man that owned it was like a hoarder. He'd had it since like 1971, and it was just packed full of crap. So bad. And I actually had some time, and I got to get in there and just like work. I'm talking like sweat, lifting, back breaking work, getting home exhausted. I needed that more than anything. I needed to feel alive. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just to feel alive, other than this BS.
Yeah, my step count, you can, because your phone started tracking it around that time. Like, you don't even need like a Fitbit. Like, I mean, it's probably not that accurate, but my step count like quadrupled. It was, it's like a quarter-mile walk from my office to the mailbox and back. Like, it's that long. You got to walk through the whole little house and down. I'd
love to see that place.
Yeah, come anytime, man. Yeah. I'd love to do that. But so my kids are getting involved in this, this church, and we have sort of a mental health crisis happen with one of my sons, and it's starting to become apparent what living in that environment as kids did to them.
Mm-hmm.
As my wife has now completed a master's degree in social work right before we do this move. So she's, if she never works in the field right now, she's not currently working in the field, but if she never actually does it, it was worth whatever couple $100,000 we paid Mars Hill
Yeah.
because
she has this like
it was like
perspective.
Oh, she was like a wizard. Like, how did you do that? You didn't,
A wizard.
like she was.
It's
she
true,
was.
though.
She just started. My wife is an amazing human being, and she makes me better, and all the other cliche things that guys say. But she's actually the best human being I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as far as if we were going to quantify and value virtue and like motivation.
We explained earlier that we have to do that.
Apparently,
Yes.
yes. Apparently, this is the way.
Your wife isn't better than mine.
Well, fair enough. They can duke it out.
Just fine.
Yeah, I'm sure she's. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting.
I
your
know
wife,
that'll happen someday. I hope.
but she used that degree to learn and open up. So she began therapy not long after that. So there's some struggles along the way, and we start realizing like how, like, I don't know if I want to believe some of the same stuff. Like the separating of the meat from the bones is becoming more and more like apparent, like, but we're not like ready to like be involved at a church or something like that. And my friend Dustin that I mentioned from earlier, he's severely mentally ill at this point. He's endured the amount of trauma just from, like from one stage to another in his life is more than we understand. Come to find out, and I won't go into the details, but he actually, Dustin was so mentally ill that he had actually gotten qualified for ketamine treatment.
Oh, wow.
End. Yeah. And I say at the end because he passed away recently, but, I began to like reconnect with Dustin. And this time my friend Dustin had the word atheist tattooed on, the inside of his like forearm, right? Like, but all the way to damn near his shoulder, like in big block letters had atheist. Like it was just black letters, but it probably took 3 sessions. You know what I mean? It was that big,
just like a ton of ink.
I mean, it was just like, this is, and he had, I mean, it was a very similar upbringing to mine with the weird, like selective moral high ground, like religious shit that like, what, that doesn't even make sense. This is not okay. But his motivation for that is like, let's just save everyone some time, and most of all me and my emotions, because I will not be rejected because I can't perform your whatever it is that you're expecting me to do. And he calls me towards the end of our tenure there with this place. He calls me. He's like, I really need to talk to you. And we reconnected on social media. And that's weird when you hadn't seen someone since like you like played Nintendo in their room, but they want to call. Like, it's like, I don't want to talk on the phone, like I hadn't talked to him in a long time, we'd connected like on social media some, but, and he calls me, and we were good friends, and we had a mutual respect for one another, but we weren't like close at the time. I mean, I had affection for him. I would have, if he'd called me and needed something, I would have gone and done it, but we weren't close. And he tells me that he's had this experience where he felt immense peace. He wasn't high on mushrooms, but he had essentially what he described to me was basically the same, for lack of a better word, and endeavoring to sound as churchy as I can, the presence of God.
Right. Yeah.
What I describe.
You should just always talk like that.
Is that right? Yeah, cool.
What I would describe.
It sort of sounds like Bane, but
I think my beard needs to get a little grayer, and I need to walk with a little bit more of a limp from this
I'm
hip
jealous of your
replacement.
hair, by the way. I'm
Are
not
you?
jealous of. You'd think I'd be jealous of everyone's hair, given my condition, but I'm not. But you have cool hair.
Thanks, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. This whole thing. Tell me more.
I was going to
about-
say it looked like, David Schwimmer from the Friends.
Thank you. I've been told Backstreet Boys. I wear hats mostly. It's weird. I've been playing out again.
Hey, I got you a Burroughs hat. Be sure to wear that online.
That's going to be on all my TikTokies. Yes, I'll be having a TikTok.
Awesome.
Yes. Well, it became apparent what this environment was doing. Slowly but surely, we're realizing to the point where it came to a head, and there was a. Miriam and I had an opportunity for the kids to go like away for one of these like church weekends where they go and play and do the stuff, and they do, and they'd been involved with this church, and they'd been really kind and good to the kids. And, we didn't really, we made our, if we didn't say it out loud, all of our nonverbals were saying, we don't want to be friends with you.
Yes.
We're here for our kids. Please don't talk to me, kind of deal. And, there's this one particular guy that was like his personality and mine. I don't know. It was with my past stuff and he was very charismatic and friendly, but he introduced himself to me. And, we said hello, and then we had to talk about, because my kids were like playing in the band, even for the whole big church. They were like, because David, by then, no one, my stuff's hidden under a bushel. No one knows I know how to play anything.
Right.
And I was very content with that. I had honestly really considered my days to be over, and I was just going to be like the old dad that fixes weed eaters. And I mean, really,
Yeah.
as long as the money's coming in, and like I just emotionally was just, I just didn't care, and I was depressed is what it was. And we had this opportunity for the kids to go away on this weekend with the church. Miriam and I did.
Yeah.
And they come back, and the lady wants to talk to us. It's like they're gone for the weekend, and you're picking them up at the church in this big bus thing, like one of these trips. And she's like, we just need to process something with you. David was telling everyone on the bus, they were doing a sharing session, how he was feeling, had plans and thoughts of suicide, No, my wife's literally paid $100,000 to learn about how to deal with people. You can't treat your own family, as it were, but
Of course.
so she knows all the steps to take. She knows by law what to do, and he hasn't done anything. So she talks to him, and she sort of gives him an opportunity. Now he's dead tired because they've been up all, but this particular function had an atmosphere that triggered, I believe, something that was very similar to that experience of his childhood. And he felt such strong feelings about that I don't even know that I've heard him articulate this, and I don't know that I've ever articulated it like this before, but I feel like that it motivated him to decide that I'm going to show you guys that these songs that you're singing, everything is possible, and this stuff is not true, because he had seen me come home and cry about, or mad every Sunday, this son of a, the stuff that I was putting, the goofy, I'm just told you the traumatic stuff. There's just day to day, just goofy crap.
Right.
The next day, he assures us that he's okay, everything's fine. But he had just gotten his driver's license, and Mom and I are talking on the sofa, and she's like, maybe you go get his keys, because we had taken away his car, and we told him, well, we're going to take you tomorrow. We took away his keys, and he had to ride as a car rider and not like the newfound freedom guy. And so this guy that's introduces himself to me at the church, that I was telling about a few minutes ago, he forgets that he's introduced himself to me before. And I've been there 1,000 times. I've done his job. I know church people. I can code switch, So he asked me who I was. I was like, oh, so yeah, that's my son. Yeah, I've been here 8 times. You've introduced yourself 8 times, something like that. He didn't get the joke. I think it hurt his feelings.
Oh, yeah.
But it was it wasn't it was always sort of a weird interaction with this cat, it's impossible for someone to see that. I've literally sat in the meetings that you sit in. I've done your job.
Yeah.
I've done it well.
Yep.
But you can't download that to somebody's mind. So I have a bad habit of just assuming that you understand that I get, but you have no idea what I'm like. So anyway, I get a call from this guy, and all he says was, hey, this is so-and-so. I've got your boy. Now, I thought David had skipped school. I thought he was pissed off because we didn't let him drive. And I said, oh, I just cut the guy off. Where is he at? He's like, well, is it with me? Where at? Well, we're over at the church. And I go to pick him up, and I go in the front door, and where's my son? I walk around, and there's this guy meeting me, and there's 2 or 3 people meeting me at this hallway to go down to this door, and they're trying to talk to me. I'm I'm not going to give you the cordial, hi, how you doing? I'm here to get my son. Where's he at? And they're like trying to talk. I mean, it's not sinking in what's happened. And I open the door and there's like a room full of these people around the church. Like they got hands on him, they're praying for him. And that just like, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no, we're not doing this shit. Like the last organization marched my toddler around the room to show everyone at this conference at some hotel they made me drive to and pay and play for peanuts that he could speak in tongues as a tot. Like that was like, no, I don't care what you have. And I said, come on, son, let's go. And David looks up at me and he says, I'm not going to your, like, he's clearly like out of his mind. And I'm like, what is going on? And it was the most like blister peeled back, like raw, like it was like emotionally, like I couldn't handle it. I was going to start throwing punches at people. And I just thought for a second, I was like, they're going to call DSS on me, or I don't even know what to do. David's out of his mind. And I think for a second, and he's been here for a few minutes. So I just look at him and I say, okay. And I turn around and I leave the room and I call my wife. And what I saw in the room was he very seriously attempted to take his own life in a manner of different ways while he was attending the school. And he was going to jump out in front of a car. That was because everything else had not worked. So this guy that introduced himself to me 7 times, he came across as a damn like used car salesman to me, you know, in my cynical state. I understand that he's a very, very sweet, like very authentic man, but it was picking my scabs, you know.
Sure.
That's a pretty awful visual. He was driving down the interstate and this guy, like he's known, like apparently this group of people know this guy. He never doesn't take his eyes off the road. He's like weird about it. And he says that the Holy Spirit told him to look over his shoulder and he saw just like right as it was coming through the trees, like the back of a ponytail of a dude walking. And he said he immediately knew that it was David. Like David had played guitar 2 or 3 times at the church and he turned around and went to pick him up. And David was going to kill him, so probably successfully at that time. So that's what I'm walking into with this. And this sets a whole catalyst of events in my life. My friend Dustin, about a week later, no, it was like 2 nights later. So I mean, this is traumatic. I've seen on his person how he's this child that I've held.
Yeah.
So I have to take him to this hospital in Raleigh where they like lock him behind a door like a jail. And I called Dustin after they took him up the stairs. Or I texted him. He was like, why don't you just come over? Like, because he lived in Raleigh. And at the time, I hadn't talked to him. It was, you know.
Dustin, this is the one with the atheist
this
on
is
the
the
arm.
one with the atheist on the arm that had the experience.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, he had finally gotten qualified for ketamine treatments, and it was really doing him some good. He had good days and bad days physically. He had a lot of physical problems. But I get to his house, and just about every time I've seen him in my adult life, he's been like pretty much on a sofa or having to walk with a cane. Like he physically just not doing good. You know, he jumped out of airplanes in the Navy, and he like meets me in the driveway and all but carries me in his house. He said, I knew you were coming. I've been having these ketamine treatments, and I don't know who I've been talking to. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew you were coming like soon, like one of these days. Like I didn't know what I was supposed to help you with, but I knew I was supposed to be able to help you, and he was there. I don't know what I would have done. Dustin had tried to take his life numerous times, and he was an old friend that I could trust, that I didn't have to hide things. He knew things about me I've never told anyone else but my wife. He was, at that point, he was my best friend. And he was able to give us some advice, and he had to talk me through and like I know this looks like this. This is what you need to, this is how you can be there for. He really did immeasurable. Sorry.
No, that's a beautiful thing I'm hearing. So he knew you were coming.
He knew I was coming.
And he was ready.
He was
In the right space at the right time.
He had the fact that guy had the capacity to have those conversations. And he died like 3 months later. It's like he stuck, and he was miserable. But he made it long enough to get me through, like, I don't know what I would have done.
It's like he was called to a purpose. You know?
I told that story to my therapist, and I was like, explain that to me. And his eyes were like, I got nothing else either, man. Like, Dustin never read a Bible. That's not true. He was off the chart, like, intelligent. He'd read it more times than I. He knew it better than I did.
Yeah.
He was like Andy, like, he'd call you on your bullshit. Like, well, that doesn't even, I'm not being mean. It's just historically not true what you're saying, you know. But he experienced that same, like, the real person.
Yeah. Most people forget that the Bible didn't exist until 398 AD. So all of the early believers didn't have a Bible either. So and they had the Holy Spirit. Sounds to me like that's what you're dealing with for sure.
Yeah.
And that's me and you as believers. I don't know what Andy's thinking right now, but without even explaining, I don't want to over-explain it. But to me, I've had experiences not like yours, but I've had moments with people, and I feel like God is orchestrating something through someone, and it doesn't have to be some measure that I've set to what I think what this has to be God. It breaks the rules.
Yeah.
It breaks all my rules.
Yeah.
My rules don't matter. It's outside the box.
There was a Muslim dude at the vape shop in Raleigh that it was like, he just put his arm in, like, he said some words to me that were, I won't share, but it was like,
yeah,
dogmatically that shouldn't have happened according to the manual. I'm not saying that I disagree with the manual. I'm just saying there's a perspective that we don't.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you what I've experienced.
Of course.
So the happy ending to that is we're all in a much better place. That was a catalyst for all of us to take seriously what was going. Okay, you know, all bets are off. I don't care if you say I'm going to wherever, hell, what, like, I'm going to be there for these kids. Like, I'm not having that, you know. And it was a rough road. He went from being all-star, like, football player, popular kid to, you know, he had to, like, finish his high school out in a program where they, like, rush you through, or they all fluff. It's all computer program. It was a godsend, and he graduated a year early. So he's now going to be taking, you know, college classes, and he's doing a lot better. And it's been a really healing experience for me personally, because the culture of this particular group of people that get together is a lot healthier, and it's been pretty profound. And there's been some supernatural experiences there with, you know, words of wisdom and words of knowledge, you know, essentially prophecy, telling you stuff that, you know, maybe you can't hear because of whatever. I don't know. God's creative, man. You know, he didn't have to make the sky blue, and he didn't have to make the Grand Canyon look that cool. You know, they could have looked at a whole bunch of different ways, but he's in art. He's creative. That's the first in the actual, was it Torah, the Old Testament? Like, the first word is actually, like, create. That's literally the first word of the text of what we call the word of God is creator. Like, it's creative, you know?
Yeah.
I can get down with that. So
anybody that would design the sea cucumber.
The sea cucumber, for real. And a sense of humor, right? Yeah. He's a person. That's it, and I won't have it another way. I won't stand up and sit down and follow your little bulletin. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm respectful, but I'm not going to pretend that I can't do that. I'm not going to pretend that that's real to me anymore. Right. I'll tell you what's real is Dustin being there and the love and the kindness that God, when I spend time with him and he makes himself known, and the answer and the mercy, like stuff I put myself in, that he very kindly sometimes lets me experience some, you know, consequences of my own actions. But like, the more I know him, the more I don't worry about like how I'm not worthy or this depth of moral bankruptcy. Yeah, that's we dealt with that. We filed that paperwork, and now
Yeah.
I'm already adopted. I don't have to keep talking about. I don't have my he's not bringing it up.
No, he's not.
He's not bringing it up. That's the dude I hang out with. Is not like that's not that he won't address things that
No.
are being destructive, and
It's like a lot of believers are like a bad stepbrother.
it's true.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the older brother even.
Or the older brother.
No. You got to be miserable like we are.
Yeah, you need to become
Yeah.
one of these days you'll grow up and be a chemical engineer.
I want no part of it.
Exactly.
I can't do it.
Yep.
I'll be nice and respectful,
Yeah.
but I won't play guitar. I won't burn your church down. I'll mail it in. I'll play like jazz chords. Ka-fwink, 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 ka-fwink. I respect ka-fwink, ka-fwink.
This is the most intimate that we've ever been able to be. We've always been friends, but thanks for sharing that.
Well, I appreciate, again, I'm taken aback when anyone cares what I have to say about anything, really, but it's an honor. And I guess you understand now why I really just kind of wanted this to be the three of us. I didn't.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I didn't put two and two together.
It's okay, man. I'm pretty good with the flow. I had to say that I wouldn't have been able to.
This
Of
worked
course,
out.
that makes
The
sense.
whole day worked out better this way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Just the whole thing worked.
Right on.
Well, normally, if you'd been in the room, Billy Kimsey, eye candy, he always asks the final question. Okay, so the final question of your testimony: where do you go when you take your last breath when you die?
Where do you think you go?
Where do
to
you
be
think
clear.
you go? Yeah, not where. Yeah, where do you think I think you should go? But where do you think?
I think I go where I started. Yeah, I mean,
That's what Andy says.
okay. Well,
He's like, where were you before you were born?
Well, you know why he says that? Because he believes it's true.
I know.
Everything he says, he believes is true. That's one of my favorite things about Andy
Yeah.
Bishop. You don't have, you know where you stand, you know what he thinks. And I would take that 1,000 times over the Southern bullshit that we all grow up with. So
Yeah.
you're a delightful human
That's
being.
one of the reasons I love him so much.
Yes, he's a
You
treasure.
get what you pay for at Giraffe Studio.
To clarify, I believe that there's scriptural evidence, and I feel confident, and for lack of a better word, I feel like I got the nod from him about, before he formed us in our mother's womb, he knew us. I believe we're going back where we were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A newborn baby is already like head and shoulders smarter than a dog.
Yeah.
Even though they don't have the motion or there's something else going on besides just chemistry and meat, muscles, and salt and stuff. So I believe,
Wherever souls come from, souls go.
Well, I think the veil's a lot thinner than we think that it is. I think that's where a lot of the ooky spooky, I think the spirit realm is a very real thing. I think science is kind of catching up with a lot of stuff, and they put names to stuff. Like vibration is a thing that resonate. Like people resonate the same. Like you're having a conversation and you don't like the way it's going. It's because you're not. But I think it's what the old timers would call intuition. But there's more than is happening or explainable clearly.
Yeah.
I'm convinced of that. And I won't argue semantics about like what's the secret handshake, and do you have to acknowledge that he was born of a virgin, or can you get saved without acknowledging that, like the formula says to do? I believe that there's value and inherent value in truth in the Bible. I do believe I read the Bible clearly.
Yeah.
I rattled off a few earlier. I mean, I know I've read it a time or two.
Yep.
And that's important, but like I do a lot more just hanging with him.
Yeah.
Than I do like reading text. A lot of times it'll be like a principle. It's like an onion, man. And the manifold like forms of.
I've noticed that there was an older woman in our church that she just spends time with God, and she doesn't know everything about the Bible, and she can't tell you all of the different things, but she's got a relationship.
Yeah.
And she just knows him. And she talks about, she's a widow, and she talks about how you just don't know. She tells the young kids, you just don't know. spend time with him. Spend time with him. You gotta spend time with him. I think that's really where it's at. I think that's where we're headed. Good stuff. Just out of curiosity, do you feel like playing your music?
Am I keeping you guys up too late, or do I?
I'm good with it if you are.
So let's take a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
I didn't realize. Oh my God, it's 10:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying open so late, Draft.
Yeah.
I believe I go to heaven. I don't believe everyone does, but I don't think for some of the same reasons. I think God's a lot bigger and smarter than some of the dogmatic versions of and interpretations of what scriptures say are. So I'll leave it at that.
Right. Well, let's get the guitar. I want to hear it.
All right. So I wrote this like sort of around the year right before I stopped working in the business, and I just went to working at home. So I did that before COVID. So I was already like transitioning to where I could live in another, couple of counties over or away and not have to be there every day. And this song I kind of wrote, and it kind of, as I was trying to separate the meat from the bones, I've used that several times tonight. It's realizing before I realized like how much of my own mental health had to do with the way that I related to God, just like it does with the way I relate to you or my kids or anybody else, and how that gets in the way and the need to address it. But this one's called Calvary. Lie to myself, I tell me I'm sorry. Hard to believe, sadly it's true. Looking for enemies, they're hiding about me. But in the end, your villain is you. So send in the cavalry, send them for me. Tell them to kill the one that's chasing me. Lift up your voices now and tell me I'm free. I'm starting to see that the enemy is me. Mother dear, come, 'cause I need your comfort. It's been 17 years and I feel the same. Been wrestling with demons and angels in my heart. I wonder if I'll ever change. Won't you send in the cavalry, send them for me. Tell them to kill the one that's chasing me. Lift up your voices now and tell me I'm free. I'm starting to see that the enemy is me. Then don't you break it, no. Then don't replace it, no. You fight all you can, but you find that you're faking, no. I need a hand is all to lift up my head and say it's alright. Yeah, it's alright. You can sleep through the night. I say send in the cavalry, send them for me. Tell them to kill the one that's chasing me. Lift up your voices now and tell me I'm free. I'm starting to see that the enemy is me, yeah. Send in the cavalry, send them for me. Tell them to kill the one that's chasing me. Lift up your voices now and tell me that I'm free. I'm starting to see that the enemy is me. I'm starting to see that the enemy is me. this portion of the Grand Ole Opry has been brought to you.
That was great.
That was awesome, man.
Yeah, well, it was great.
Yeah, thank you very much. And listen, I'd like to have you come back.
Thanks, guys.
I'd like to have you come back again, but maybe just kind of have like a little music talk session like that. And feel free to bring your friend.
And I mean, he's just a great little add-on.
Just an add-on, with us. It was fun.
You're out of town, I know, but
Yeah,
if you want to
yeah.
drop in, I'm sure we could shoot you in.
Yeah, we'll bring you back here, man. I want you to come back.
I'd be honored. I had a really good time. I'm sorry to keep you guys so late.
No, it's fine.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
The last question of the night is, can I have your social security number?
Justin can tell you that. Like, he can memorize numbers like that. So,
Really?
Yeah, he's walking around. What's up? 592 592. Like, you just rattle it off. He just takes once to see it.
Hey, I love you, brother.
I love you, man. Thanks for having me,
Yeah,
guys.
man. Thank you.
We'll talk to you guys again next time on the Burros of Berea. Peace out. Hey guys, this is Rick from the Burros of Berea. Do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make a podcast? None. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a lot. And so if you guys don't mind, if anybody would like to give to help us with these episodes, it would be great. We'll put out even more content. And if you go to our Patreon page, just search for the Burros of Berea, you'll get extra notes, extra episodes, and it's pretty much free. $1 gets you a lot. Thanks, guys. You still have to drive to Maggie Valley.
Oh, well.
Don't remind him.
No one said I had to drive well. No one said I had to drive well.
Yeah, I got some little stout. It's perfect because it's a 4% beer. It's 16 ounces.
For real?
Yeah, we'll break one in half, and neither one of us will both have the satisfaction of a beer, and neither one of us will feel like we did.
That's true. That's awesome. Well, I'm sure you'll edit out what you feel like you need to edit out. I did talk to my son prior to.
So he's okay.
That's
and
cool.
I talked to he made a joke about it. Like what I didn't get to say on the podcast. The drive to that hospital was the best conversation I ever had with my son. Like to this day, it was like, because
I guess at that point you just can.
It's all out in the open now. Everything else is like the worst is over, and he was like, I just realized how he needed me to just listen to him. He needed to be able to like not pretend. He says "God damn it" all the time in my house. Like we don't love it, or Beaver doesn't love it. Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I don't. Sammy says Jesus Christ every other word. Like there's more important things. I'd rather have you, I'd rather have you here than you follow whatever dumb semantic rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. He's ran into my way.
See, I don't normally talk because when I do, it's like, I better put on this soft pillow on your chair. And I was so nervous to say all that stuff too. So I was like, my mind was just racing all over the.
Sure. But it actually, we tied up every loose end.
Cool.
That's why I was glad you got back to Dustin, because I was like, we left Dustin. Where's Dustin?
You were doing
And then
a good job.
and then you tied it back in as like a.
guiding.
Yeah, it was good.
You always do. You're pretty good at it.
He's great at it, dude. He's big time. All
All
right.
right, give me just a little bit of a check.
All right.
I'm gonna shut my eyes and listen. Okay?
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Entertaining people I've ever met in my whole life. And that's true. I told Miriam, I was like, I don't have to do like any sit-ups today because I'm gonna go hang out with Rick. and she understood. She was like, "Oh yeah, you want like take some Advil like ahead of time?" Or,
Some of the memes though, some of the memes that you've sent me, Jim, it's so fantastic.
dude. After COVID, I like in some situations in my life, like I've really sort of just leaned into being me. And, So like Joel, keyboard player Joel, he plays he was on that record with I know for sure Derek Stipe's record. I played with him on a couple of tunes. He was over, and that's how I got to. He hosted a singer-songwriter like round table and invited me last year, and I brought Shelly, who I was telling you about.
Yeah,
and
That's cool.
they were like, "What?" It was really fun, and she's pretty green too, so she's still kind of experiencing like, they like it, like, yeah, they do.
Yeah, I think that's the best when it's raw.
Yeah, it's
That's
cool.
the best. So
bit.
I guess let's get back to where we were.
Yeah.
Like right up
yeah.
on it. Okay. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? 'Cause
Back away,
I'm running
yeah.
the strip, but I forget it. If I don't hear myself that much, it won't make me want to back away because I hate the way I sound.
Yeah. So